Okay. No, it got you on that online one. Yeah. Now go back to Learn. Okay. Have you opened this before?
No.
Okay, let's, don't get out of that. Go back into your main menu down there and just, or type in Office in that search box. That will work too. And click on Office 365. Yeah, that one. So did you go download it from?
No. So I just see it off.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably gonna have to sign in with your NRG account, okay? Okay, click on for home, let's see what happens. Go back up, go back a spot, okay? Let's go, sign in. So use your SAP email and password, okay? And see if that does it, because that should allow you to get to it, okay? Because again, you would get the free thing. Oh, we're recording, okay.
Your email is your username for SEC, right?
Hold on. I'm not the best person to be, let me go look in Blackboard real quick at the information. There's a bunch of papers for you to get over there, and the, one of everyone except for the twos that are turned sideways, there's 2 pages in each little collated set, okay? Let's see. All right, it says, in technology, it says your SPC email address is your SPC username plus at southplainscollege.edu. So it is your username. Good morning. We got a lot to cover today. Let's see, and hopefully we won't shut off early, so, whoops. Hey, it's always good on your phone to drop it. I do it all the time. I mean, the last time my husband had a stroke and I dropped the phone, like, and it shattered my screen. I was like, I can't find out if he's sick or not, so I had to get a new phone. This is my favorite. That's why I have an OtterBox this time, but look at my OtterBox.
Oh, yeah.
It's, what, not quite 2 years old, so I've been dropping it quite a bit. So, all right, I see Crosbyton, are you there? I see everybody sitting where I can't see them, so. There are a lot of papers to get out, and one of the things we're not gonna go over today is the grammar, punctuation, and mechanics. I went ahead and got you worksheets on those so you would have them. And it actually, I might make sure I'm in the right Monday, Wednesday, not Tuesday, Thursday. Okay. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna cover stuff, but we're gonna have to fly through a lot of things today, but we're gonna try to come up with, possible topics for you to write your narratives over, and I've graded about, well, I lack 7 to finish this class, getting the paragraphs graded. So, I had to go watch my 7th grade grandson play his first football game last night. Oh, yeah, it was against Lubbock Cooper, and they got smeared. Well, they held them scoreless in the second half, but I think that's because they put in the second team on the B team, so they weren't, But hey, it was, you got to play. So, that's the very first thing I want you to look at. Hopefully you're getting copies of the grammar worksheets. Put those aside. We will cover those next week because you have a quiz next Friday over comma splices and fused run-on sentences, which I've been seeing more and more of as I've been grading the paragraphs. And one nice thing you're going to notice on those paragraphs, they're only worth 30 points, okay? So if you didn't do well, you didn't lose a whole lot of points. So if you did the discussion board, that makes up for not doing so well on the paragraph. Now, I noticed that when I looked in the grade book, somebody has not finished the discussion board. You need to get one of each paper, except where you can see there's kind of like sets of two. You'll need to, okay, there's a bunch coming in. And it lets you log in, okay. Yeah, and you should be able to save it easily as a Word document on your computer, so we're working on, and it is JC, right? Okay. Hi. Come on in, and you got a lot of papers to get, okay? Over there. So, now Zach, are you sitting on the back row or on the middle row? Which, where are you sitting? Right here where you can, I'll wait till you sit down. I'm trying to create a seating chart so I can learn your names more quickly. Let's open up the PowerPoint. You have one that looks like an outline, and it is a PowerPoint, quick PowerPoint over narrative. I'm going to fly through it, hopefully, very quickly. There's 2 pages on those that are, can you see their sets, how they're turned, where you have 2 pages, and then you have one? There's one that's got, it's amazing how college kids cannot pick up 2 pieces of paper at the same time. And I've discovered this over the last, 15 years. It's great. All right, so narrative essays, but we're looking at the very first one, okay? That looks like an outline. That is just talking about a narrative, because we're now leaving a paragraph when we're going to write a complete paper, which means we're going to have at least an introduction, a body paragraph that's going to be the bulk of the narrative, and a conclusion. So you're going to have at least, so Claire's next to Megan, okay, all right. And we've never seen Victoria, so she's probably going to get dropped this week, so. I don't know why people register for college classes and then don't, unless they want to get the financial aid. Then you have to pay it back. Okay, narrative essay. Do you guys know who this actor is? Can you see his picture well enough to tell who it is? Morgan Freeman, yes. He played God in a movie with Steve Carell, I believe. And he's just got that, if I had somebody who I wanted to narrate my life, it would be him. He would be one. Or maybe Emma Thompson. I just like, that British accent. And Morgan Freeman's got this very soft way of doing it. But basically, the purpose of a narrative is to tell a story. Pretty easy, right? Narrative essays are organized traditionally in chronological order, which means you start at the beginning and go to the end. Unless you get somebody who wants to start in medias res, which is in the middle. Sometimes that makes it more exciting, that when you begin a story, you're already in the middle of the action. Anytime you, like a scary movie, a lot of times scary movies start with somebody being killed, right? So you're already in the middle of something happening. So all I can think of is Scream. Is it Scream that where Drew Barrymore's ends up dead on the garage door or something? I don't watch scary movies. I'm going to tell you, I made the mistake of flipping over, and it said A Nightmare, and I thought, I wonder what that movie is. So I flipped on it, and it was the end of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the very first one, or maybe, could have been any of them. I know there have been a bunch. And the girl is alive, and she comes home, and her mother's got her, and she goes, I'm so glad you're okay. And she steps back, and her daughter's looking at her, and in the mirror behind her, you see Freddy. And he stabs the mother through the eyes, and that's how the movie ends. And I screamed, and my husband's like, what is going on? I was like, that's why I don't watch scary movies. I don't deal well with that kind of stuff. So I'm just up there. So basically, you tell them in chronological order, but it says, like any other essay, a narrative should begin with an introductory paragraph where you set up what you're going to talk about. And so one of the things we're going to go over are some possible quotes that can be used as a jumping point for your narrative, all right? This paragraph will be followed by a minimum of 3 paragraphs. No, actually, what we're saying here is you're just going to do 3. That didn't work. It worked yesterday. What's going on? You're just going to do 3. All right, I'll quit trying to write on my screen. It's a minimum of 3 paragraphs. Introduction, body that's the story, and then a conclusion. You can have more than 3. All right? That's all. And always end it with a memorable and strong concluding paragraph. And for me, the end of your paragraph might be, from your narrative, what lesson the central character in your story learned about life. See how that's a good way to end it? Of course, it could be you. That's why I just wanted to call the central character. Because there's always somebody who wants to write a truly fictional story about knights and countries with magic and things like that. Somebody always wants to do that, and that's fine. but you've only got a minimum of 500 words to write this in, and it's really hard to develop a full story in that few words. And always remember to stick to one point throughout the essay. Each paragraph should flow smoothly. So transitions are very important. Transitions, particularly in a narrative where you've got sequential or chronological things going on, you begin with first, next, then, finally. I prefer that you not go, the first thing that happened on my trip was this, the second thing that happened. That's pretty elementary, that you might have used in elementary school or middle school, but we really need to. You can say, after a brief period of time, we went, see how that's better than saying, yeah, you can have some more interesting transitions. Then that's something I noticed on the paragraph since I've graded most of this class, that those transitions between your different topics got omitted. And that, when you're just jumping from talking about your family or your sister to your parents, you need a transition between there. In my family, I also have, parents, one of those kind of things. You just need some kind of phrase that says, I'm done talking about my sister. So you're getting kind of quick criteria or criticisms of what I've seen on the ones I've graded. Viewpoint, because narratives tend to be personal in nature, you can write this in first person, which is I and me. But I don't want every sentence to begin with, I did this, and then I did that, and I did this, and do you know how that's boring? Pronouns are boring. Pronouns have to have antecedents. So if you do end up selecting a topic and writing about yourself, just make yourself a character. Just put your name in there and say, Claire did this. Claire and her friend Sam, you know what I'm saying? And that becomes a little bit more easy. But the point is, this is the only essay you can use first person in. Paragraph wasn't an essay, all right? It's just a paragraph. All the others after this will be third person point of view, which is formal academic writing, okay? And they can also have some fun. The one thing you aren't going to use in any of your writing for me is the word you or your. And I didn't point that out on the paragraph, but stop and think about it. If I say, you need to do this, I've just given you a command or instructions, haven't I? So I'm addressing you. So I've had paragraphs where you go, if you could see this, well, it's not a conversation. The reader cannot respond when you write, when somebody's reading what you've written. So you don't address the reader unless you're doing one of the new big things in writing is now to talk to the reader, okay, whatever you're doing. But you're not doing that. We're working towards formal academic writing. The reader knows I as the person is the writer. We know who the writer is, it's you, so you don't need to use I. And we're the reader, and you don't need to talk to us because we're reading, So no second person, which is you and your. Okay, and that's it. So that's all there is on the PowerPoint. So let's look at the one that is 5 tips for writing, okay? I'm going to go back up to the top of that because I'll be using that in just a minute. 5 tips for writing a good narrative. Okay, enable editing. I'm going to have to blow up the screen so we can see it. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. All right. So I found this online. I thought these are pretty good. This is pretty good advice for any writing, actually. And narratives can be a skill. If you're going to go get into a field when you graduate from college that does some kind of research, a lot of times you will be writing narratives. Like if an anecdote is another fancy word for a story. So when you're writing, doing research, you might have a case study where you followed somebody who's doing something that could be in psychology, sociology, criminal justice. Those things are out there, and you need to tell the story, and the story makes it more interesting when you do a narrative versus when you just talk about it very formal and academic. So clarity is important. Complex words and syntax are a hindrance to clarity, and I haven't seen too much of that in the paragraphs, but it might start happening because all of a sudden you're thinking, I'm in a college class and I need to use vocabulary that the teacher will appreciate. What happens then is when you use a word incorrectly, and I have to go, oops, you can't use that word in this context because that's not what it means. So avoid going to using the thesaurus option in your word processing document because sometimes there are subtle nuances to the definitions of words, and you have to be careful. Or if you hit spell check. One of my favorite spell check not catches is somebody was going to write about the importance of Japan after World War II, but they misspelled importance and it came up as impotence. totally different meanings, so be careful. So here we go. Look at this example. Although I've never been to the races before, I was very excited to behold them, yet also somewhat nervous because of the type of people who go there. That's a little bit kind of vague, but have any of you ever used the word behold in speech with another person? Now, I've sung the word, and there's a Behold the Lamb is a Christian song, big thing. That's the only time I've ever used the word. Behold, I bring you good tidings of, you know what I'm saying? All right? So don't use language that that I wouldn't hear you say. That doesn't mean you can use bad words, okay? Be careful. But look at the improved. I've never been to a horse race. I was excited to go, but also a little nervous since I wasn't sure about the people at the track. That's a much more interesting sentence than, yet also somewhat nervous because of the type of people that go there. I've only ever been to the racetrack in Ruidoso, and, all kinds of people are there. So it's one of those deals. And it says, don't describe each and every one of your own movements. So what happens is one of the topics that people like to write on is the trip they took somewhere because it was really cool. And I got that on a couple of people have told me about their vacations. But stop and think about it. You'll say, okay, I'm going to write about our trip to the Bahamas. And so you begin with, because you're telling it chronologically, well, I began to pack my bags. And then, if you begin to do something, don't you have to finish it if you're telling the narrative? So you would have to go, I began to pack my bags, and then I closed the suitcase. So don't begin to do stuff for one thing. Just, I packed my bags. You with me there? Don't start to do stuff. Don't tell me about the trip in the car to the airport. Do I want to read about your trip in the car to the airport unless some really crazy things happen? And then the focus should not be your trip to the Bahamas, but the trip to the airport, okay? And then you want to tell me about the flight. So we're 500 words in and you haven't even touched down in the Bahamas. So be careful. Don't give every little step because that's boring. You really want to read about, well, I brushed my teeth and then I gargled and, So don't describe each and every single step when you're writing the narrative. So here's an example. As I went in the door, I turned and saw TV. I looked around and saw posters on the wall. As I went further in, I noticed everyone was watching MASH. So first off, there's that bad repetition as I went in and as I went further in. See how that's not helpful. So avoid unnecessary repetition. Look at the improved one. I immediately noticed the posters on the wall, though everyone else's eyes were focused on the TV playing MASH. Do you guys even know what MASH is? It's a TV series that was on for many years about the Korean War and the Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. So it was a bunch of doctors stationed in Korea during the Korean conflict. It really wasn't a war, I guess. Okay. Avoid the second person narrative. Yeah. The only time you can use you or your in a second person, that second person in a narrative is if you have dialogue and one person is talking. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have wrecked your car. You see, you can do it in dialogue, but you don't any other time you're addressing the reader, which takes you out of the narrative. If all of a sudden, and there are, like I said, there are a lot of contemporary fiction authors who are doing this right now. They address the reader all of a sudden. And you're like, whoa, it's not like I can respond. So don't do that. Let's see. To interest the reader, dynamic word choice is key. So try verbs. Avoid passive constructions. Don't begin sentences with, there are many things I can do throughout the day. Many things are available for me to do throughout the day. See how that's much more active? So avoid it is, there are, there is, avoid those constructions. So I am presented an array of unpleasant photos in which many casualties are shown after automobile accidents. They show me a book stuffed with gruesome pictures of people who've been in car wrecks. Which one's more interesting to read? The second one, where you give detail. And that's something I've been seeing is you've been writing pretty vague statements about stuff. Like someone went somewhere, and the only time they gave me a description was of eating tamales and hot chocolate. That was it. Everything else was just, oh, I love my family. We had a great time. You know what I'm saying? Well, they made it more exciting. How did they make it more exciting? You see where I'm talking about? You just stop it being explicit. You just vague terms. And limit references. I don't expect you guys to do any quoting, but if you do decide to quote, and that's a possibility in your introduction or conclusion, you don't have to do a works cited, but you do need to give credit to whoever said the words. So for the example they give here is, when I first saw the comic book fans jumping up and down, I thought, as they would, Lord, what fools these mortals be. And you can see it says Gaiman, 1989. He's Neil Gaiman, he's an author. I later learned why they do this. Neil Gaiman wrote, his most out there book is one called Good Omens. It's about an angel and a devil who, since the beginning of time, they've created a relationship. So they're up to contemporary times, and they've decided to save the world from the apocalypse. And it's a bit sacrilegious, but it's hilarious. And they also made a movie version of it. There was a series that was on Netflix. But because they become friends in a way, so it's kind of quirky. But this is improved. The fans jumped up and down. When I first saw this, I wondered what they were doing, and my mind conjured a quote from Shakespeare that Neil Gaiman used in his Sandman. Lord, what fools these mortals be. However, I watched a bit longer and realized the company spokesmodels were throwing free merchandise. The fans wanted to get the most from their day at the convention. Yeah. Don't we all want free T-shirts if somebody's throwing them? Yeah. Okay. So the narrative essay is a keen rhetorical tool because it allows the readers to draw their own conclusions, but falling into the traps above deprive it of its effectiveness. Avoid those errors. All right, so that's that one. So now we're going to go look at intros and conclusions. Just very quickly, just to give you an idea, because you don't have to write this just yet. All you're going to have to come up with over this weekend is a narrative outline. This is basically kind of giving me an idea of what you're going to write it on, okay? So, sorry. Let me make it bigger. But you should have copies. So, the opening paragraph of an essay should start with several sentences that attract the reader's attention. Several is 3 or more, if you need a number. It's not like back all those years ago when I had to teach tax writing. I can't even say it. It's been so long. Kids could get away with a one-sentence introduction, but you can't really do that anymore. It should advance the central idea or the thesis of what you're going to develop in the essay. Frequently, it gives a plan of development, the thesis does. Like our second sentence, what was supposed to be the second sentence in the paragraph. I have some interesting pets in my family. The pets range from dogs to cats. See how that second sentence, if you combine the two together, you would have a thesis, and you could write a full essay about that. I could spend a lot more time writing about my dogs, my cats, and my hermit crab, since I'm only down to one. But when you give an order, you have to follow it. And I have somebody who said they were going to talk about this and this and this, and they didn't follow the order. And I thought, whoa, hold on. Okay. So look here. You've got the example is winter is my favorite season because I like the weather, the holidays, and the sports. So we already know you're going to talk about weather, then the holidays, then the sports, and that would be a 5-paragraph essay because you have to have 3 body paragraphs. In some cases, a lot of times when you're dealing with a more sophisticated topic, you can omit the parts of the thesis you're going to deal with, but for my writing, if you're going to talk about certain things, you need to put them in the thesis. But if you're just going to talk about the fantastic vacation, my family and I went on a great vacation to the Bahamas, that'll do. Unless you only talk about getting in your car and going to the airport and flying, okay? Focus on the main point. And begin with a broad general statement of your topic and narrow it down to your thesis statement. You start off broad, like if I were going to write about World War II, I might say one of the most tragic events in world history was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That's pretty broad, and I could narrow it down to specifically what I would look at. So 6, 7, these are ways you can do, these are things you can put in your introduction, but don't do them all right? So when we're talking about, let's see if it'll work today. Nope, I can't get it to work. Somehow I've messed that up. Okay. You can start with an idea or situation that is the opposite of the one you will develop. So one of the possible topics that you can write this on is my hero. So a lot of people might say, when people think of heroes, they think of individuals like Superman or Batman. My hero doesn't wear a cape or a mask and conceal his identity. My hero is my dad who blah, blah, blah. You see how you can do that? That's starting with the opposite, and you're going to talk about something else. I used to make when I was teaching in a high school, their first paper was a narrative, but it was a personal hero they'd have to write about. Explain the importance of your topic to the reader. You could do it, but I don't know how interesting that would be. You can use an anecdote, which is an incident or a brief story. I might avoid that one since you're already giving the narrative. Telling a story or introduction and then telling a second story might be a bit confusing for the reader. You can use a quotation, and that's one of those things we're going to look at, are some quotes from the textbook, okay? Conclusions, basically a conclusion a lot of times will summarize the essay by briefly restating the thesis. Don't use the exact same words. I remember them from your introduction to your conclusion. If you use the exact same words and the exact same word, it's the exact same sentence, I'll remember it and go, unhelpful repetition. Do you really want to read the same words all the time? I already know you guys don't like to read, right? So think about if you keep reading the same words, that gets boring, doesn't it? Okay. The writer often presents a concluding thought about the subject of the paper. Guess what? When I said, what's the lesson about life you learned from that story? That's what that is. You know, our trip to Bahamas taught me some important things. The main thing I learned was blah, 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 whatever that lesson was. Okay? You can include a thought-provoking quotation. So you can use a quotation in the introduction. I don't know if I would use a new quotation in the conclusion, but reusing part of that quotation in the conclusion is a good way to tie the paper together. But it has to be a really good quote. Or you can end with a prediction or recommendation. It might be, don't ever stay at this hotel in this town because you'll have a horrible time if it's on your vacation. And that's really all I've got on conclusions and introductions. So let's look at the one that says narrative outline, and then we can devote the rest of the time to, I thought I opened that one up. Nope, I guess I didn't. Hold on, okay. Thanks, Mr. Pettit, Dr. Pettit. All right. Let me see here. I've got to open up the document, I apologize. And the nice thing is when you go into course content and you look on week 2, you will see that I've actually have the outline sitting there where you can see it in week 2, okay? Though I didn't give you a copy, so let me come down here. So if you're curious, I've got everything in folders, narrative outline. This is what's going to be due on Sunday night, I believe. I have to move around. Let's see. Yeah, you turn in an outline of narrative to the Blackboard discussion by midnight, and we're going to go over those in class. I'm going to look at what you're doing and tell you what I think of them, okay? And that is 4 points. Outline. There are 3 outline narratives that you have to do. You have to do one over the narrative, one over the compare and contrast, and one over the argumentative, not over the summary. So this is for credit, so don't fail to do this because that hurts your grade. All right. Let's go. All right, so I thought I clicked on that. Okay, so if you're curious about where this is, I even give you the page number it occurs on in the textbook. So what is a conflict or source of tension in your essay? If you're writing a narrative, there has to be a conflict. A story has a conflict, right? There just has to be. What statement have you chosen, sorry, there's a typo there, as your thesis? The second one says the incident should be limited in time. What is the length of time in your essay? How many days, hours, whatever are you talking about? One of the best short stories ever written is called The Story of an Hour. There's the time limit on it. It's written by Kate Chopin. It shows up in junior literature textbooks because that's American Lit. Nope. It's only like 2 pages long. If you're with me next semester, you'll be reading it. I'll just tell you. 3, what emotional response does your narrative create in you, the writer? You know, most of the times you're going to write about something where I was happy when this occurred. I was very sad. Do you think it will draw or evoke a similar response in your reader? That means you need to think about it. When we write, we need to think about what have we included that's going to pull the reader in, or have I left too many, you know, can they tell what really is going on? And then I think it's 4. It's very short, isn't it? Does the incident fully support the statement you have chosen? If you choose a quote or a statement to springboard from, all right? So now we're going to go to the textbook, and we're going to look at the possible outline, possible quotes they use. I have to go, didn't have that open for some reason. And I just jump into whichever one shows up top for me, since I have all of the textbooks show up in every time I go in. here we go, and it brings it right back to where I was in whatever version. So on 239, you have this list of quotes. Not all of them are great. But up here it says, think of an experience in your life that supports one of these statements. So the first one is, if you never have a dream, you'll never have a dream come true. You know, if you want to write about what your future job might be, that would be it. Before I got married, I had 6 theories about bringing up children. Now I have 6 children and no theories. Do any of you have children? Then this probably is not one you were going to use, okay? And notice how I am not clicking on that right arrow. I'm scrolling down, okay? There are some things you learn best in calm and some in storm. It works for either way. Something in a quiet, kind of serene moment, you learned a lesson. Or, in other words, something bad happened in your life, that's the storm. And what did you learn, okay? We've all heard this one. Success is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. How many coaches talk about, you need to give 150% on the field, right? Again, after watching my grandson play his first football game, oh, that was hilarious. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. I'm not trying to give you guys ideas, but let me just say that back when my daughter was in high school, and she will be 40 in January. Oh, wow. I had her when I was 10. No. She told me, she said, oh, Misty and I are going to go spend the night at Ashley's house. I said, okay, not a problem. And then apparently Misty told her mom that she and Ashley were going to spend the night at our house, and Ashley told her mom that they were going to spend the night at Misty's house. So they didn't spend the night at anybody's house. They lied, right? Have you ever lied? Have you ever snuck out? You're grinning. Have you done that? Have you? Okay, I've seen it. Okay. So it's, it's not that unusual, is it? So that's practicing to deceive. So have you ever told a lie? And sometimes you get some, guess what? She did get caught, okay? I'm just letting y'all know. So it tends to happen. But that's the kind of thing, And please don't write something, and I'm going to tell you, if you write something that creates some concern in me, I will let your facilitators know, who will let your counselors know, or I will say, do you need to talk to someone? Do you guys? I've had a student that I actually got counseling information for in past years. So, and I like this one. There's a sucker born every minute. Aren't freshmen kind of suckers when they go into high school? Our big thing to do when I was in high school was get the freshmen. We'd take them out in the country or out to the cemetery, which was about a mile outside of town, and we'd say, we're going to go snipe hunting. Anybody ever gone snipe hunting? You take a couple sticks and beat them together and drive the snipes toward the people. Well, you send the freshmen out with sticks to do that, and then you get in your car and you drive off and leave them, and they have to try to get back to town. Grew up in a small town. I graduated with 32. Come on, you had to make your fun where you could find it, right? So I went to school just like what they're at. Okay, we lie loudest when we lie to ourselves. All marriages are happy. It's the living together afterward that causes all the trouble. None of y'all are married, are you? Okay. I have one student that's married, I think. I have Rodney, who's a retired Army guy. He's 32 and has been retired from the Army for a year. He went in at 17. And he's got 4 kids. So he's the only one that can write about the one about the 6 kids. That's interesting, yeah. It's really, all weddings are happy. It's the marriage afterwards that causes all the trouble. I like this one. Hoping and praying are easier, but do not produce as good results as hard work. It's kind of, if you're Christian, it's kind of you should do both. You know what I'm saying? Andy Rooney. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Oh my goodness. I'm from Texas. Did I say thing? Said a dangerous thing. Alexander Pope, interesting author. Nothing is as good as it seems beforehand. Have you ever been so excited because you're going to Six Flags, or you're going to some amusement park, and you get there and you have to stand in line, and it's really sweaty in Dallas, and then you finally get in, and then everything is super crowded, the bathrooms are gross, it's just disgusting, right? And everything, or have you heard the phrase, the grass is always greener on the other side? Don't they mean the same thing? Nothing is as good as it seems beforehand. That's what that means. Okay, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Older people become afraid of things because we've lived long enough to figure out we need to be afraid of things, okay? Like and I'll bring this up next semester when we're talking about the dark. Older people, have you got a member in your family who's getting older and they don't like to drive after dark? Because you don't see very well, okay? Life shrinks or expands in proportion to your courage. Because we've seen all those people who've died in car wrecks from that earlier thing, okay? When I got to the end of my long journey in life, I realized I was the architect of my own destiny. We like to think we are the architect. A fool and his money are soon parted. How many of you have had to have the most popular thing and you get it, and then the first thing that happens is those tennis shoes, those shiny white, clean, whatever brand of tennis shoes that are the popular ones, they get dirty right away? Or you had to have that purse, or that coat, or that necklace or piece of jewelry, you know? Yeah. From what we get, we can make a living. What we give, however, makes a life. That's a great statement. What we give is so much more important than what we get. Arthur Ashe is was one of the first international African-American tennis stars. And I believe he contacted AIDS from a blood transfusion and has passed away. There's the Arthur Ashe Foundation that honors. I don't remember what, but I just remember watching him play. No matter how lovesick a woman is, she shouldn't take the first pill that comes along. You got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. Same thing, same point, right? Interesting. Dr. Joyce Brothers, she's a psychotherapist. Fear not those who argue, but those who dodge. Are any of you Hamilton fans? It's got some fantastic music in it. One of the songs, Aaron Burr, who actually kills Alexander Hamilton in a duel. It's true. All of that, most of what happens in this is true. He sings a song to Alexander Hamilton, and he says, "Smile more, talk less, never let them know what you're standing for." That's what that means. You know, watch out for those people who don't let you know what they stand for. It's called politicians. Okay. Trust in Allah, but tie your camel. If you don't tie the camel up, he's going to wander off, right? So you tie it up. You know, trust him, but don't be a fool. It's kind of like that earlier one. So all of those are possible quotes. Or if you find some kind of inspirational quote and you want to do it, just send it to me in a course message, and I'll tell you what I think of it, okay? So now here's the fun one. I have a huge, long list of topics. They are contained at the bottom of your... Let me go over here and go into content. So I'm having to remember where everything is too. So when you scroll all the way down, you're going to see the very last thing is a possible topic list. So you can open this up and look at it. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. I'm going to be honest. But there are good places to start. And some of them are very similar in nature. So we'll just come up here. So have you ever gotten lost? I grew up in a town and graduated with 32. El Dorado is 45 miles from San Angelo, a decent-sized town. And my parents always drove. I didn't drive. My parents were in the car, they drove. I didn't drive. So when they let me go up to San Angelo on my own, and I couldn't find my way around the town because I didn't pay that great of attention when they were driving. Or my daughter last night, kids played at Lubbock Cooper Middle School. So she plugs in Lubbock Cooper Middle School into her cell phone's, map finder, and it takes her out to 122nd in Indiana. That is not where my grandson was playing. He was over, there's another football field just south of Cooper's Field that's really close to 87. And it was his first game, and she was so upset. It was hilarious. It was hilarious for me, but not so much for her. So when I got lost, my favorite, you can only trust that stuff so well when you're talking about directions, right? My favorite meal, you could write that. If I could go back in time, make this something in your life. Don't talk about, if I go back in time, I'd like to live in dinosaur times. Okay, come on. I saw the weirdest thing. My grandson sent me two pictures. I have three. One of them sent me a picture of a cat and a picture of a salamander. They weren't in the same area. I was like, why did he send me pictures of a cat and a salamander? But he's an 11-year-old boy. That might answer that question. Okay. An animal I would be. Okay. Something I wish I had. If I could, I don't think 7's very good. I wouldn't recommend doing 7. Let me see if I can. I still can't draw. What did I do? If I could change one thing about me, I'd be taller. You know, it would be nice to not have to, why is it in grocery stores, they always put the things I want on the top shelf, and it's not, you know, it's, you probably don't run into that as much, but yeah, the stuff's always not, it's always on the highest shelf. Why? Okay. Let's see, a place I'd like to live, you can write this one. My secret place, they're not necessarily the same. Something nobody knows about me. I turned down an opportunity to dance with Lawrence Welk one time. Do you even know who Lawrence Welk is? Got to be old to know that. I'd like to invent this. Okay. It would be nice to have invented. There were a couple of ladies in Brownfield, Texas, created the card game Uno, sold it to whatever game company, Milton Bradley, somebody like that, for a buku of money, and had big houses built in the Lake Ridge Country Club edition. For a card game, you know? If I could be somebody else for a day, my most interesting animal encounter. Have you ever been around wild turkeys? I'm not talking about the alcohol, I'm talking about wild turkeys. We had one move into our neighborhood in Lubbock about, probably 10, 11, 12 years ago. And a wild turkey stands, it was 3.5, almost 4 feet tall. And it would wander up and looking for food and water, things like that. And so I'm walking my big black lab and my little chihuahua, both of whom are gone now. And it's in the winter, and when you walk dogs poop. That's what the walking does. It encourages that activity, okay? So I picked up their poop, and I had a, grocery bag, plastic grocery bag in my hand, and we're walking down the street, and the turkey's a little angry. It's an angry bird, okay? Go into YouTube and type in angry birds and see how many videos you can see of turkeys doing crazy things. So we're walking down the street this way, and I can see the turkey coming towards us. And so I move across the street, and as I move across the street, the turkey, and by the way, they can fly, not very long, but they can fly enough to cover some space and jump up on tops of houses, lands on the back of my black lab. My chihuahua's going under a car, and I'm swinging the bag of poop at it. And guess what? Didn't hurt the turkey, but it exploded and went all over. So that was my interesting animal encounter. And I actually have a YouTube video of that turkey chasing my cat from the back porch under a storage building, which is kind of funny. The bird chasing the cat instead of the other way. Okay, interesting animal encounters. If you show stock, you might have some of those. You won't believe I saw this. My hero. See, it's in there. You can write about my hero. But the thing to remember is if you're going to write about another person, the sentences should not begin with I. If you're writing a narrative about my hero, it needs to be about that person and not you. That's one tough one. So if you're going to write about somebody else, make sure you give me their name. My favorite weather story, well, we all got to spend a week at home in February, didn't we, when we got the snow? My favorite superpower, some of these look like questions that I asked on the introductory discussion board, right? If I were invisible, that would be scary. If I were president, if I could have any pet. The grandson that played football yesterday now wants a boa constrictor or a python. Yes. I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to. Okay. Surprisingly, if I had $1 million as a topic that students like, what would you do with it? I would come up with 3 things. If I were to get $1 million, I would buy myself a new car, pay off my parents' debts, and travel across the world. You could write that narrative. It would happen. A job I hate, a TV show I would make up. I don't know. A job I hate to do. Do any of you have jobs that you have to do in your work that are disgusting? I used to have students write a descriptive essay, and some of the most descriptive essays I would get would be about about the bathrooms in gas stations. I would say, somebody has to clean it, but apparently they don't clean them, right? If you ever, okay. The most beautiful thing in the world. My parents were right. That's a great title. Use this as a title. My parents were right. What were they right about? I shouldn't have trusted so-and-so. Okay, I'm checking the time here, 9:39, okay. My favorite toy ever, we had that on that discussion board. A hard lesson learned is the same thing as my parents were right. If I had my own planet, sounds pretty fictional. My greatest accomplishment, I scored 29 points in a JV basketball game when I was in high school. The other team was pretty bad. It said Olson leads win in the El Dorado success paper. My glory days are gone. I've never gotten a job because I scored 29 points in a basketball game once. So I throw it out there. Okay. My lucky charm. If you're a high school athlete, you're superstitious, and you have certain things you have to do. You don't wash your socks the entire season. You have to put your clothes on, your pads on a certain way, you know. Lucky charms. We're superstitious. I'm that way about attending athletic events. I didn't like going to playoff games when I taught at New Deal because it was a guarantee they'd lose if I showed up. It was. So, you know, I am that powerful. That's a logical fallacy. We do not control what happens to our athletic teams. But have you ever felt like you're the bad luck charm? You know, because, you know, oh, why can't Tet win football? Because I'm a fan, that's why. You know, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes I felt like that, okay? If I could make school rules, most places would most of you guys want to change the dress code, which allows guys to have long hair, and your hair can be different colors, and you can pierce whatever you want to. The bigger the school, the more likely that there's more leniency in the dress code. The smaller the school, the shorter the hair on a guy. Think about it, okay? How embarrassing. My favorite embarrassing thing to do that I haven't done in the last 25 years or so is ask somebody if they're pregnant. And they're not. So I just gave up on it, unless they're wearing something that says baby on board, okay? That'll give it to me. My favorite gadget, please don't write that one about your cell phone. I already know it's your favorite gadget, okay? My earliest memory, I'm pretty old. I can remember part of it were memories I was told, but this one I remember sitting on the porch in my aunt's backyard eating something at her house, and I know I have to be like 2. But I don't have a whole lot more memories. I remember maybe at 3. I remember getting my first pair of regular shoes. I was born with I incubated too long, and I had what's called reverse clubfoot, so my dad was on leave from the military, and we were in Dallas so that they could take me to Shriners, and I had to wear braces on my legs. So I can remember getting my first pair of shoes that were not part of that whole hookup. That was kind of exciting. I don't want to write about that. I don't remember. I just remember getting that first pair of shoes. It was like amazing. Under my bed. When I was a kid, everything that I didn't want to have to deal with went under my bed. So now I just store stuff under there. The hardest thing I ever had to do, that's an interesting one. Say goodbye to a family member, maybe. If I could live in another century. If you want to write about living at a different time, you can do that. Be careful. Just to, you know, there's got to be good reasons. This made me laugh. Funny always happen. There's a secret place. I think we had my secret place earlier. If I could invent a holiday, I would make every Friday a holiday, right? No, because I got to go out and visit my school. The year 2050. I'm going to throw this at you. That is 29 years from now. How old will you be? I will be 96, 95, 96. That's old. But you will be getting closer to 50, won't you? So, in 2050, what will you be doing? Yeah, I'll be dead because I'm sure I'm going to do something stupid and die. You know, first year I taught in high school, I had kids and they thought, they wanted to be wrestlers, professional wrestlers. Not a single one of them ever became a professional wrestler. There was one who became a lawyer, and I was like, I can't believe that. That never crossed that kid's mind when he was in high school. But he's a lawyer now. So in 2050, what are you going to be doing? So, but I stop and think about how old I'm going to be. I will not be grading the papers you write in 2050, okay? I won't be grading any papers. The greatest invention, again, don't write about your cell phone. 5 things I can't live without. You could change that to 3 things I can't live without. My family, my phone, my friends. I don't know. Or 3 things I would give up. When I was a little kid, guys, I'm sorry, but you're all little kids to me in a way. But, you know, when I was a little kid, you've already heard some stories, I used to have an imaginary horse. My mother said, that she and my dad would freak out, I would walk over and hand them the reins to the horse. Please hold my horse. I don't remember doing that. Something that disappeared. Don't write about the dodo or the carrier pigeon. The best news I ever received. Most memorable trip. That gives you, there's all kinds of things you can cover with that. Your first day at college. That hasn't been that long ago for you guys. I don't think you guys can write this one at the high schools. I'm sorry. You're not really in college yet. Well, some of you have a lot of credits. But did it feel different to be going into a college and you're not having to wait for the passing bell and, you can wear what you want, right? My first day when I went back to get certified to teach English, I walked into the Sub or the UC. They switched the names every 5 or 6 years there at Tech, and I spilt my drink when I was buying it, and I was like 30-something. That's embarrassing. So it covers a couple of them. All right. First day at college. Let's see. The moment of success. I am hoping that you guys don't have a journey through hell, but you might. There might be something that's happened in your life that's extremely tragic. I have a student from one of these schools who was in a horrible accident in the summer before her senior year. And she almost lost her hand. And the kids will probably know who I'm talking about. But I had that student a couple of years ago, and she wrote about that. And that's, to go through multiple surgeries and things like that, that's very difficult. That pain and emotional and physical things, okay? The biggest misunderstanding? A difficult decision, the trip of my dreams. You can see a lot of these are kind of similar. The day I decided to change my life. I do get this paper occasionally from students, particularly SPC students. I've had some in the past who have talked about, one of them openly talked about his drug addiction last year or the year before, and how he's been clean for so long and stuff like that. Then he didn't show up for a couple of weeks and I got worried. Well, when somebody has an addiction, that is a concern always. He was just sick. Maybe it was COVID. My dad's influence on me, there's my hero. So it could be negative or positive. Learning to fit in, don't we all? Isn't it about fitting in a lot of times when you're in high school instead of being different? Even though all the movies show that being different so much better, right? All the movies show that. My first day at work, you guys all have jobs here? And probably some of those high school kids have jobs too. My career, why is different than when. Why I started my own charity project. If you have one, please let me know. I'd be impressed. My career plan, this gets written about. Particularly, my online students in the summer want to write that one.
Your conference is scheduled to end in 2 minutes.
Why I always find time to be with my family. Some of you already wrote that in your paragraphs. My first car was a Rambler from 1963 Rambler. Yeah. Learning it the hard way. My best friend, learning it the hard way. My baby teaches me what I love about my city. Okay, so we've got Lorenzo and Crosbyton and Abernathy, right? So what do you love about your cities? And somebody will write that paper. You can do it. My mom's childhood. European Road Trip has already been made into a movie, so don't write that because I actually have seen parts of that movie. My crazy wedding day, meeting Mr. Fisher. I have no idea who Mr. Fisher is. I'm like, the old Creek. When I realized I'm not a kid anymore, that could have happened to you, okay? My grandma's hands, interesting paper. That's almost like my personal hero. The person I will never forget. Growing up in New York, most of you can't write that one, but you can write about growing up in Lasbuddy or El Dorado or Lubbock, right? My daughter swore she'd never live in Lubbock after growing up here. Guess what happened to her? Okay. Driving class. Everybody's done, have you done driver's ed? Okay, we're almost out of time. You've got quizzes over chapters 3 and 4 that you take Friday. You have the narrative outline due Sunday. Glance over the stuff on the comma splice and the future run-on sentences. You've got like 5 pages on that, those, because that'll be your quiz next Friday. So you can
Your
see that
conference
we
is
don't
now
meet on
over.
Fridays.
Goodbye.
You'll have a lot of work, or in the case of some of you, I'm gonna be out visiting you. This week, I'm driving to Lasbuddy, 90 miles north and west for one student. I'm doing her first because it's the farthest drive, and I wanna do it while it's daylight. So have a great weekend, okay? And keep checking to see if I